Good morning, my dear students. I'm Miss Tania Poveda. This is Entrepreneurship 1. I'm very happy to be back. Remember that it's very important that you download this information on your computers or tablets or cell phones. Also, you can take notes on your folders or notebooks, or you can copy the links and save them on your work programs or any other way you need to remember the material that we need to study later. Okay, so are you ready? Let's start. Well, before we continue, it's very important we remember some information that we've been studying lately. So do you remember maybe the couple past classes? Do you remember what we've been talking about? Well, if you don't worry, because today we're going to remember. So we've been talking about types of organizations, the classification of organizations. But what is an organization? Well, you know that it's a group of people, in this case legally formed to make money. It's a group of people working together with a common goal and doing specific functions to reach that goal. Okay, so remember that organization is a group of people with different functions, but working together to reach or to get a common goal, a common objective. How do we classify organizations? Well, we are going to study, or we already study, two of these three types of organizations. We can classify organizations by sector, by size, or by ownership. Today we're going to study the classification of organizations by ownership. Do you remember the classification according to sector and size? Yes, so. Well, let's take a look. When we classify organizations according to economic sectors, we can classify them into 3 or 4 groups. We are going to study 3 groups or sectors. So we call it primary sector or basic production when we're talking about production that you get directly with any transformation from the nature. For example, when you go fishing, you go to a river or you go to the ocean and then you fish, you get that fish directly from the ocean, from the water, but you don't do anything to that fish, you sell it just that way. That's primary sector. When take something directly from nature. Example, agriculture, forestry, mining, fishery, etc. Now you remember, right? Well, the next sector is when you transform that raw material coming from the nature into a different product. That's the transformation of raw materials. It's the secondary sector, and it's the production of goods. For example, industries, construction, craft, etc. So here's a little bit more complicated because you transform the raw material into something finished. And the tertiary sector is the one we also know as services. So what is that? Well, services are things that you cannot touch, but that you need. For example, internet service. Can you see internet? No, right? It's an invisible signal. You get it on your computer, on your cell phones, but you cannot touch it, you cannot see it. Other examples are trade, bank, service, transport service, education, culture, health. For example, when you go to the doctor, you don't feel good and you go to the doctor and the doctor is asking you questions. How do you feel? And you're talking and telling him or telling her what do you feel or what you don't feel. So in that case, this doctor is offering you a service, the service of checking on your health. So these were the three types of economic sectors that we already studied. And I saw in some of your videos talking about this, and I'm pretty happy that you understood really well. What about the classification according to the size? Well, there are two ways that you can classify organizations according to the size. You can classify the size of organizations according to the number of employees, or you can classify the size of organizations according to the amount of profits they make. So when we're talking about the number of employees, we must understand this chart here. When we talk about companies with less than 10 employees, we call them micro companies or micro business or micro organizations or micro enterprises, etc. When these companies have between 10 and 49 employees, we're talking about small businesses. When companies have between 50 and 249, then they are medium businesses. And when they have more than that, when they have 250 and more employees, in that case, we're talking about big or large enterprises. Okay, so just remember these numbers here, and you will recognize if it's micro, small, medium, or large companies. And when we're talking about the size of companies according to the profits, we have this chart as a reference. It's not a precise chart, but it's kind of a reference. When the company makes less than $100,000 a year, we can say that it's a micro company. When they make between $100,000 and $1 million, it's a small. Between $1 million and $5 million, it's a medium company. And any company making more than $5 million, it's considered a big or large company. So those were the classifications that we should remember before continuing. It's very important that we remember that small and medium companies are extremely important in all societies because basically those are the businesses that move the market, that move the money in a society. Small and medium companies. And there is a key word in Spanish that we use a lot here in Ecuador. Because of the translation of these letters, we call it pymes. That's the pronunciation in Spanish. Pequeñas y medianas empresas. Remember that these pymes are extremely important for Ecuadorian economy and for any other economy around the world, by the way, because they generate new jobs, because they move money, they transform raw materials, they sell services, so they make the money go around a country. That's why they are extremely important. And because they are not huge, there is kind of a better environment to work there. It's kind of like a familiar environment sometimes. So that's also a plus when you're looking for a job or when you start a business, especially if you are considering to be entrepreneurs. Because usually when you are an entrepreneur, you start like a micro or like a small business, and then you grow until you become medium or even better, big or large company. Okay, so With that, we finish the review that I wanted to make with you before continuing to other classification of organizations. And this is ownership. But what is an ownership? You probably have heard other words like friendship, relationship, entrepreneurship. So it's kind of like a similar grammar there, similar ending. So you probably, if you understand the word owner, so ownership, it's going to be very easy. But in case you don't know, here I have an example about what is ownership. So when you buy a car, you take ownership of it. It becomes yours. Well, I'm using you, but it can be I. When I buy a house, I take ownership of it. It becomes mine. When I buy a puppy, I take ownership of it. It becomes mine. So the state relation or fact of being an owner, that is ownership. Once you buy something, the title is on your name, that's yours. That's the fact of being an owner. That's ownership. Okay? Easy, right? Well, probably you're asking why I'm pointing this and said adopt. Well, this is a personal advice because personally, I don't agree about buying and selling pets, dogs, cats, birds, or any other animal. I don't agree with that, and that's why I pointed this. I did this. So my recommendation for you is that if you have the chance between buying an animal or adopt, please choose adopt. Because animals like dogs and cats, they need a house. And if you can be a good owner, please adopt and don't buy, okay? So the thing is that this is only for the example to understand what ownership means. In other words, everything is yours or everything is mine. Just like her. Okay, so she probably is already bought a car, a house, and a pet, and that's why she's so happy and she let us know that this is all hers. Well, this is just to remember what ownership or to study what ownership is. So how do you classify ownership? Today I'm going only to mention ownership and see a very short video introducing about this. And next class we continue with the whole explanation of each of these types of ownership. For example, number 1, we have a sole proprietorship. Number 2, we have partnership. Number 3, corporations. Number 4, limited liability companies. And finally, franchise. So that's the way you classify companies according to the ownership. And as I told you before, we're going to watch this short video to introduce what ownership is and explaining a little bit 2 or 3 types of ownership. So let's watch and learn. Okay, so that was a little introduction about only 3 classifications of ownership according to ownership of corporations or organizations. Okay, so next class, again, I'm going to explain each of them. By now, that's all for today. I'm very, very happy to be back. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope that you enjoy the material I prepared for you. And I hope also that you have a wonderful day. So please wash your hands, stay home, stay safe, and see you soon, guys. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.